J.B.T. Media. The world under the microscope.
Let's get back to this very important and timely story of the rise of Hezbollah. The story of Hezbollah really starts when the vast Ottoman Empire broke apart in the early 1900s. Europeans came in and sliced all of this up, France taking all of this territory. But then they drew a line here to carve out this little mountainous region, one that was populated mostly by Maronite Christians. But the border didn't include just Christians. The French made sure to include this area to the east and this area to the south, areas that contained large populations of Shia Muslims, who were now forced into this new country where they were made a minority to the Christians, along with a few other religious groups. We're going to focus a lot down here, on this Shia heartland that would eventually become one of the most important regions in the whole Middle East. In 1943, Lebanon gains its independence from France. It creates a constitution meant to balance the power between all of these religious groups. But that balance wouldn't last, mostly thanks to what started happening down here, where another set of borders were being carved into the Middle East. The British had controlled this, but in 1948 they left, and the UN helped draw these new lines, creating a new Israel and Palestinian state. Decades of war forced out millions of Palestinians, many of whom ended up here in Lebanon. These Palestinians are mostly Sunni Muslim, so this upsets the carefully laid power balance in Lebanon and further marginalizes the Shia Muslims who were fighting for their place in the country. Then in 1971, an armed militia made up of Palestinians called the Palestinian Liberation Organization moves to Lebanon, and they turn this whole region, which again was made up of mostly Shias, into their own little mini-state. You start to see that Lebanon is descending into division between the different militias and powers controlling parts of the country. And in the mid-70s, it all breaks down into a full-fledged civil war between a dizzying number of religious factions. It's a war that will pull in much of the Middle East. And it's a war whose most important region is down here, in this border zone between Israel and Lebanon, the place that will soon give rise to Hezbollah. Now let's talk about Syria. They're here right next door and they're watching this civil war. And they decide to invade, to prop up the Maronite Christian ruling class, who've become Syria's allies. They want to do this to prevent the civil war from spilling over into their territory. At this point, Syria also considers annexing the entire country of Lebanon, making it a part of Syria. But eventually the relationship between Syria and Maronite Christians breaks down, and Syria continues to occupy this part of the country. Meanwhile, to the south, Israel fears that Syria is growing too powerful. It also wants to wipe out the PLO, who is attacking them across the border from Lebanon. So in 1978, Israel enters the fray, invading from the south and driving deep into the country. Israel succeeds in temporarily suppressing the PLO, but in the process, it displaces hundreds of thousands of locals, most of them Shia Muslims. It eventually withdraws after a UN resolution. But then in 1982, after more PLO attacks, Israel invades again, this time pushing all the way to Beirut, fighting both the PLO and Syria. And this is where the conflict takes on a new dimension.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Candid Truth. We're going to talk about the truth and we're going to get candid with it. Tonight's video is going to be about the origins of Halloween. 5 things you didn't know about Halloween. It's hard to believe that we even have to talk about this subject, but you would not believe how many Christians these days are still celebrating this satanic originated holiday. Let's get into it. We got some slides to go through. So the dark origins of Halloween. Do you know where this all started? There was a pagan holiday called Samhain. I know it looks like it's Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain. And we're going to use secular sources here. This isn't going to be chick publications or some Christian zealot or even like some conspiracy theory website. We're just going to go back to the origins. That's what we like to do on this channel. We like to dig up the truth from the origins, from secular sources, the encyclopedia, whatever. This comes from Britannica. Halloween. Notice it says alternative titles, All Hallows Eve, and related topics, All Saints Day, Holiday, Samhain. So the Encyclopedia Britannica associates Samhain with Halloween. There's a very good reason for that, because that's what Satan does. He just wears many different disguises. So in the past, there was a lot of idol worship. You had Baal and Diana and all these things. And these days we're like, we don't worship idols. Oh, but we got Cardi B and we got Lil Wayne and we got all these idols, right? But even so, comic authors will tell you that these new superheroes are literally just pagan gods repackaged. That Batman is Hades, that Superman is Zeus. So Satan just loves to redisguise his tricks. And so the same thing has happened with holidays. If you haven't seen the pagan origins of the holidays, check out that video. Aubrey went through tons of them. It's only part one of 3 parts, and it's a 3-hour presentation. That's how deep this stuff gets. Aubrey's going to be covering Halloween even deeper on another video coming out soon. But let's keep looking at this. So still in Britannica, Halloween had its origins in the festival of Samhain. So they're saying it right out. It says, among the Celts of the ancient Britain and Ireland, on the day corresponding to November 1st, on contemporary calendars, the new calendar was believed to begin. The date was considered the beginning of the winter period. So this is all about solstices and celebrating certain seasons and everything. It says, the date on which herds were returned from pastures and from pasture and land tenures were renewed. Now here's a highlighted part. During the Samhain festival, the souls of those who had died were believed to return to visit their homes, and those who had died during the year were believed to journey to the other world. So this is a celebration of the dead visiting back their homes. But what does the Bible say about the dead? It says the dead know nothing. The dead's return not to their homes. So what is the Bible trying to keep us from being involved in? Necromancy. Why? Because necromancy is not talking to the dead, but literally talking to Satan and demons disguising themselves as your dead loved ones. Now this holiday, Samhain, started with the dead returning to their homes. It's a deception, a satanic deception. Time magazine, this is Time website, says, what is Samhain? What to know about the ancient pagan festival that came before Halloween. And it says dressing up in costumes and trick-or-treating are popular Halloween activities, but few probably associate these light-hearted fall traditions with their origins in Samhain, the 3-day ancient Celtic pagan festival. So they're solidifying the fact that this is from Samhain. This is where this originated from. According to historian Nicholas Rogers, author of Halloween From Pagan Ritual to Party Night, Samhain was a time of stock-taking and perhaps sacrifice. Yes, you heard that right. Samhain had sacrifices involved, human and animal. We're going to go through and find out more about that. It says including probably animal sacrifice, during which pastoral communities prepared to survive the winter. I just think that's interesting. Pastoral. I don't know what kind of pastor, but pastoral communities. He continues and says the spiritual undertones of the Samhain festival also lent themselves to looking to the future. So now we're talking about divination, using crystal balls and Ouija boards, trying to know the future from the spirit realm. Not like the future according to Bible prophecy, but going to the spirit world to find out what the future holds. This is fortune telling, divination, an activity quite apropos to the start of the Celtic New Year. History.com notes that Druids or Celtic priests, again, we got this religious aspect, Celtic priests thought that the presence of otherworldly spirits made it easier to make predictions about the future. So they're saying, hey, this time of year, between October, somewhere around October 31st, the veil is thin between us in the other world, the spirits of the dead, and we should be able to find out the future easier. That's what Ouija boards are all about, right? We want to know the future. We want to communicate with beings on the other side, right? And October 31st would be the perfect time to do that if you were trying to communicate with a demon. And that's what's going on. History Channel. You see this picture of this pagan practicer right here. And it goes on, it says, Samhain is a pagan religious festival originating from an ancient Celtic spiritual tradition. In modern times, Samhain, a Gaelic word pronounced Samhain, is usually celebrated from October 31st to November 1st to welcome in the harvest and usher in the dark half of the year. Celebrants believed that the barriers between the physical world and the spirit world would break down during Samhain, allowing more interaction between humans and denizens of the other world. So are we supposed to be communicating with beings from the other world, from the other side, from the dead? No, this is necromancy. It's strongly forbidden by God because God doesn't want us to communicate with demons. Case closed. God knows that Satan is out here trying to deceive the entire world. And what happens? As Christians, many Christians are dressing up their kids and saying, yay, let's celebrate. I love Halloween. You know how many people I see that are just like, as soon as it gets to be like September, they're like, ooh, Halloween. And they start posting all these memes and it shows Michael Myers like dancing and stuff. And they're so excited about Halloween. Actually, I seen an article. I wish I would have put it in here, but it happens every year. Almost every year, it makes the news that somebody has to take down their Halloween decorations because they're too grotesque. The one I just saw recently was a woman. Some middle-aged woman had body bags hanging from their necks in her tree. And somebody was like, this is triggering. This is terrible. And yes, it is. Why would you want some realistic looking people hanging from trees in your yard? Do you not realize that death is not a joke? Death is not funny. Many people have had to go to their children's, their parents, their family members' funerals, and you're going to hang body bags from a tree in your yard and think it's just fun. No, this is ridiculous. Why are we so sadistic in these days that we think this is acceptable? And that's why people love Halloween. It says the wheel was considered a representation of the sun and used along with prayers. Again, we got the religious aspect here. Cattle were sacrificed. So there are this is a religious ritual that involves sacrifices to a god. You don't make sacrifices unless you're offering them to a god. This is a pagan sun worship festival. Samhain as a mandatory celebration. So this is going back to when it was mandatory. It says, and participants took a flame from the communal bonfire back to their home and relight the hearth. Early texts present Samhain as a mandatory celebration lasting 3 days and 3 nights where the community was required to show themselves to local kings and chieftains. Failure to participate was believed to result in punishment from the gods, usually illness or death. Yeah, I'm guessing that these people didn't really get killed by gods, but probably someone else, right? You didn't celebrate, off with your head. Number 2, you didn't know about this, costumes. Why are we wearing costumes? Why? What? Every holiday just has these weird traditions, and we don't know where they started from. Why mistletoe at Christmas time? Why even bring a tree into your house and decorate it? Where do these things come from? Easter bunnies and eggs, and where do these traditions come from? We don't know. We just do it. Hey, it's fun. Costumes. Why are we dressing up our kids in costumes and sending them out? Britannica again. It says people set bonfires on hilltops for relighting their hearth fires for the winter and to frighten away evil spirits, and they sometimes wore masks and other disguises to avoid being recognized by the ghosts thought to be present. It was in those ways that beings such as witches, hobgoblins, fairies, and demons came to be associated with the day. The period was also thought to be favorable for divination, trying to get the future, trying to find out information from quote unquote ghosts and dead people. This is communication with demonic beings, fallen angels, spirits. And it says, on matters such as marriage, health, and death, when the Romans conquered the Celts in the 1st century CE, they added their own festivals of Feralia, commemorating the passing of the dead, and of Pomona, the goddess of the harvest. So here we see the goddess, Pomona, and this is why there was sacrifices offered. Time. We're going to look at, we're going to just keep showing different secular sources to solidify this. And it says, many participants also donned costumes, often masquerading as animals or beasts in hopes of fooling spirits who might want to harm them. For one, I think it's pretty ridiculous that you think you're going to fool a spirit, but this is why they wore costumes, because the veil is thin and they think that the living and the dead are mingling together and the spirit world is entering into our world during this time. And out of fear, we wear costumes in hopes that the demons don't recognize that we're human and we're a demon and they will leave us alone. This is ridiculous. This is satanic. History Channel says, it was expected that ancestors might cross over during this time. Dead ancestors might cross over into our world during this time as well. And Celts would dress as animals and monsters so that fairies were not tempted to kidnap them. This is what we're doing when we dress up in costumes. We are practicing a pagan religious ritual all about demons and trying to fool demons and spirits and fairies. Number 3.
So Yahya Sinwar is dead, Israel is celebrating, but that's not all that's happening in West Asia. You also have the United States. They're stepping up their actions in the region and they have taken aim at one of Israel's enemies, the Houthi rebel group in Yemen. The Houthis are backed by Iran. They are part of Iran's axis of resistance, or as Israel calls it, the axis of evil. The Houthis aren't really a major player in the West Asian conflict. They're more of a support faction. They mostly target international trade, the ships sailing through the Red Sea.
The Yemeni Houthi armed forces carried out 2 military operations. The first targeted the American oil tanker Olympic Spirit. The ship was targeted in the Red Sea with 11 ballistic missiles and 2 drones, and it was directly and severely hit by the grace of Allah.
That was the Houthi spokesperson. He announced their latest attack. It took place last week, and this is what the Houthis are most famous for, attacking ships. They've been doing it since last November, but yesterday it seemed that the US had finally had enough. They brought out the big guns, the B-2 Spirit, America's heavy strategic stealth bomber. The B-2 is almost undetectable. It has never been shot at. Enemies usually do not spot it until it's too late. The B-2 is one of the aces up America's sleeve, and they brought it out against the Houthis yesterday. The US then released a statement. They targeted 5 Houthi weapon depots. The depots weren't exactly special. They were fortified and located underground. But they did not contain any special munitions.
Visit J.B.T. Media on all social media. Like, follow, share, and subscribe. Thank you.